Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into Geoff Thompson's real kicking. We got requests to look at his take on kicks in self-defense,
Yeah.
especially how it, stacks up against the movie stuff or traditional martial arts.
Exactly. You want the real deal on Thompson's ideas quickly and thoroughly. So, yeah, we're going to pull out the core insights from his considerable experience.
And Thompson isn't just some theorist, right? This guy's lived it. Over 20 books, yeah. But also 9 years working nightclub doors. I mean, imagine the real-world stuff he saw there.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, high-level black belts in different styles. So, yeah, when he talks about real-world fighting, his opinion, it carries some weight.
It really does. That background gives him a pretty unique perspective on what actually works when, things go sideways. He's seen theory meet reality hard.
Which brings us to something kind of interesting. Thompson wrote a whole book on kicking.
Yeah.
But he actually says it's the weakest of the main artillery ranges. Kicking, punching, grappling for most street fights. It feels a bit like a contradiction, doesn't it?
It totally does. Why write the book then?
Well, that's kind of the point, I think. That's what makes his views so valuable. He's not just dismissing kicking. He's giving it very specific, experience-based context. When it works, how it works.
Okay, so that's our mission today. Let's dig into why. Why does someone with his background feel that way? What are the limits of kicking in real self-defense? But also, and this is important, where does he think kicks fit in?
Right. The specific times they can be a tool and the context you need. We're sorting the practical from the purely flashy.
Okay, let's unpack that skepticism then.
Yeah.
Why does Thompson rate kicking lower than punching or grappling for your average street situation?
Well, his main point comes down to distance and how fast things change. He says most fights kick off at a conversational distance, like 18 inches.
Right, super close, already in punching range.
Exactly. You don't need to close the gap to punch. And from there, things can go 0 to 60, verbal to physical instantly, often leading straight to grappling, maybe even the ground. And in that tight space, that chaos, there's just no room, no time really for most kicks. They just need more space than punches do.
He quotes himself from real self-defense, right? Something like feet are powerful, but less immediate than the hands and harder to master. That immediacy seems key.
It absolutely is. Your hands are right there, ready. A kick needs a wind-up, a balance shift, bigger movement. Plus, he points out, when you kick, you're on one leg.
Makes you less mobile.
Less mobile, yeah, and easier to push over or sweep or just knock off balance.
And he tackles the whole movie love affair head on, doesn't he? All those crazy high kicks, spinning stuff. Bruce Lee kind of set that expectation.
Oh, yeah. He says, look, that stuff looks cool, great for demos, maybe some competitions, but it sets unrealistic expectations for a real scrap.
Because real fights aren't choreographed.
Not even close. They're messy, unpredictable, all those fancy moves, wasted energy, he thinks, and they leave you open. Efficiency, speed, that's what matters. Simple. Direct is usually more reliable.
He even tries to quantify it, suggesting effective kicking in a real fight is maybe for people at a 9 or 10 skill level.
Right, meaning for the average person focused on just staying safe, it's probably not the primary thing to rely on.
Yeah, the time it takes to get that good might be better spent on basics. Punching, moving, maybe some basic grappling.
That's his implication. And a huge worry for him is what happens after the kick, that retraction. It's slower than pulling back a punch.
Leaves you open.
Wide open. To get grabbed, countered, lose your balance, he hammers this point. Low kicks, hard kicks, and a super sharp retraction. Get in, hit, get that leg back fast.
That retraction is critical then. Keep your stability, don't give them a handle.
Exactly. And to know if your kicks actually work under pressure, he's huge on one particular type of training.
Pressure testing. Okay, yeah. This sounds crucial. Why does he push this so hard?
Okay, so Thompson sees the dojo, the gym, like a factory, right? Techniques are the products. And just like, say, a car part wouldn't leave the factory without serious testing.
Can make sure it works in the real world.
Precisely. Self-defense techniques shouldn't be trusted unless they're tested against real resistance. Not compliant drills where your partner just stands there.
Yeah.
He means sparring with few rules. Someone genuinely trying to grab you, punch you, elbow you, whatever, all the messy stuff.
So forget the point sparring rules. See if that kick actually works when someone's really trying to take you down or hit you back hard.
That's the idea. Validate it against chaos. It makes a lot of sense, actually. It's a mindset shift from controlled practice to, well, reality.
Okay, so he's clear on why kicking isn't the first choice for most. But he does see uses for it. He mentioned 4 specific ways kicks can be effective. What were those?
Okay, the first one is bridging distance. But he stresses this is pretty rare in a sudden street fight
Why rare?
because you usually don't start with a huge gap. But if there is one outside punching range, a kick might be used. But even then, it's often just to set up your hands as you close in.
So like a long-range jab with the foot just to get closer safely.
Kind of, yeah. But again, he cautions those big gaps don't happen much in real, sudden fights. The second use, short range kicks in a grapple.
Wait, kicking while grappling, how does that work?
Well, think vertical grappling, like a clinch. You can't do a big power kick, obviously. But short, sharp kicks to the legs, maybe the body.
To soften them up,
Yeah,
disrupt their balance?
exactly. Create an opening before a throw or a takedown, or even use sweeping kicks from that same close range. It's tactical, not a knockout shot.
Gotcha. Using a leg as a quick jab inside the clinch. Makes sense. What's number 3?
Number 3 is what he calls the square go. More like a classic stand-up fight, maybe prearranged, both guys willing to trade blows more formally.
Which probably doesn't happen often on the street.
Right, it's rare.
Heck.
But if it does, kicks can exploit the weaknesses of, say, a pure boxer or a pure grappler.
How so?
Well, a kicker has more reach than a boxer, right? So you can use kicks to keep the boxer out, and against a grappler who wants to get in close, you use kicks to disrupt their entry, keep them out, manage the range.
Okay, so in that specific, somewhat unlikely scenario, kicks help control the distance against specialists. And the fourth way.
The fourth way. And this is where Thompson really thinks kicking shines, where it's uniquely valuable, is as a finisher.
A finisher, meaning
Once your opponent is already falling or down on the ground or maybe stunned, a good, solid kick can be the best way to end the threat decisively.
right, that image of a decisive kick when someone's already vulnerable. Ends it quickly and gets you out of there. Okay, so limitations understood, specific uses noted. What about the mechanics? How do you actually generate power? It's not just swinging your leg, right?
Oh, definitely not. Thompson really stresses engaging the whole body. Power comes from the core, he says. Twisting, thrusting, extending the hip, and pushing from the hara.
A hara, below the navel.
Yeah, that center of gravity area. Think of it like your engine. Pushing from there helps transfer your whole body weight into the kick. That's key.
That core connection. You hear that in a lot of martial arts.
You do. Other things he mentions. Kime that sharp focus of energy right at impact. Tensing the muscles on contact. Traveling, which is adding body momentum.
Into the kick.
Yeah, forward or sideways. And center line extension, especially with turning kicks. We can touch on those later, maybe.
He also mentions body sponsorship. What's that?
That's basically his term for getting your body weight behind the kick. It's fundamental. He uses an analogy. Foot's the bullet, body's the gun.
Without the body behind it, the foot doesn't hit hard.
Exactly. No force. He even talks about emotive aggression, channeling focus, maybe even anger, into the technique to boost power.
So mind and body working together. He touches on the hip movements for basic kicks. Roundhouse, side, front, back. What are the key takeaways there?
Generally, the hip drives behind and in the direction of the kick. Roundhouse, hip rotates forward. Side kick. Pivot lets the hip twist and thrust sideways.
Stump kick.
More of a direct forward hip thrust. Back kick. Hips thrust backward. Pretty intuitive, really.
But he warns about timing, right? Hips too early or too late kills the power.
Totally critical. And getting full leg extension without losing balance. It all comes down to practice what he calls flight time. You got to drill it to get the coordination smooth.
Makes sense. Sounds complex on paper, but practice makes it feel natural.
That's the idea. It becomes ingrained.
All right, let's get specific. Thompson breaks down different kicks and how good they are for real situations. What about the front kick? The basic one.
He sees it as basic, yeah, but really effective, especially low. Groin, knees, shins. He likes it because, kept low, it doesn't mess up your balance much and doesn't need super high skill.
Different ways to hit with it.
Uh-huh. Thrusting heel for impact, snapping with the ball of the foot for speed, instep more for pushing. He even says a low front kick can work as a stop hit, kicking their advancing leg or ankle.
And useful in a clinch, too, you mentioned. Pulling them onto it.
Yeah, using your grip to set it up in close quarters.
Okay. What about the side kick? You said he was a bit skeptical earlier.
He is. He thinks it can be powerful, but the skill level needed to make it work reliably in a real messy fight is pretty high for most people.
So it's overrated.
He kind of feels that way, yeah. Needs a lot of practice to be more than just a push. Maybe, he says, if you practice it really low, focusing on speed and stability, maybe it becomes a support technique. But generally, high risk, high skill.
That whole dojo versus street thing again. Looks good, but maybe falls apart under pressure.
What about the roundhouse? That's a common one.
He sees the roundhouse as powerful and maybe more accessible than the side kick. Still needs more skill than a front kick, though.
Where do you aim it?
Safest below the chest, he reckons. You could hit with the instep, ball of foot, or shin. He talks about the mechanics: high knee lift, strong pivot on the standing foot, hip thrust, and that sharp retraction is key.
Shin roundhouse. Effective for setting up hands, you said.
Yeah, because you hit their leg hard while closing the distance slightly. But, he warns, closing distance always adds risk. Punches, grabs, It's a trade-off. Power in setup versus getting closer and more vulnerable. Got it. Back kick.
Potentially powerful, uses big muscles.
Yeah.
But risky if the opponent's in front because you turn your back, even for a second.
Better if they're behind you.
Yeah. Or moving away. Use the heel, aim low legs, groin. More stable that way.
And the flashy stuff. Spinning back roundhouse.
Nope. Contest kicks, he calls them. Too flamboyant, too risky, too slow for a real situation. Leave him in the ring or the demo.
Crescent kicks, jumping picks, same verdict.
Pretty much. Crescent kicks look cool, maybe useful to flick something from someone's hand if you're really good, but not a primary weapon. Jumping kicks. He thinks taking one foot off the ground is risky.
Taking both off is.
Ludicrous is his word, I think. Yeah, maybe more power, but the balance loss. Way too dangerous for self-defense. Forget him.
Axe kick, that downward heel thing.
The big, high straight leg version. Too slow, too risky, easy to slip under or grab the leg. But as a finisher, on someone already down, he thinks it's almost irreplaceable. Use a quick knee lift, then a sharp downward heel strike. Much faster, more controlled.
Okay. And stamping kicks. Sound nasty.
They are. Fundamental, accessible, destructive, he says. Mainly for finishing someone who's down. Can also be used in a clinch, stomping feet or shins, but he gives a serious warning.
Lethal potential.
Yeah, especially to the head of someone on the ground. Huge legal risks there. Use with extreme caution, basically.
Last one. Sweeping kicks.
He likes sweeps. Good for taking someone off balance, disrupting them, setting up other attacks, maybe even make them fall.
Different kinds.
Yeah, front leg sweeps, inside or outside their leg, hook sweeps, powerful back leg sweeps. Goal is destabilization. He notes a strong back leg sweep could even cause a knockout if they hit their head falling.
Okay, wow. That's a solid look at specific kicks through his lens. Let's talk footwork. It's not just the kick, it's how you move, right? He says kicking footwork is different from punching footwork.
Yeah, a bit. Main reason is distance. Kicking range is usually further out than punching range.
Gives you a bit more safety margin.
Right. So in punching, if your feet come together mid-movement, you're really vulnerable to being pushed or taken down. In kicking range, it's still not ideal, but maybe less immediately dangerous.
And double stepping.
Yeah, taking 2 steps with 1 foot. Common in kicking to cover distance or add power, but not usually recommended in boxing where you want that constant stable base. Punching footwork is generally more grounded, narrower stance.
He notes it gets tricky when you mix hands and feet, because the footwork can conflict. Boxing stance versus kicking movement. But the basics are still key.
Absolutely. He outlines a few core steps for kicking. The half step, small step forward or side, often with lead leg kicks, adds a bit of momentum.
Okay.
The double step, like a longer half step, often with side kicks to cover more ground. Side step moving laterally. Good against someone rushing you or to create an angle, often used with roundhouse or side kicks.
Back step.
Yeah, creating distance against someone moving forward. Best with straight leg kicks. Can also be used to draw them in. And the back, double step, bigger step back against someone rushing fast, usually kicking with the opposite leg.
And the key is making the step and kick flow together smoothly.
Crucial. If it's jerky, you lose balance, and the step doesn't add any power. It needs to feel like one integrated movement. Maximize reach, power, stability.
Let's shift to targets. Where should you aim kicks on someone standing? He said eyes, jaw, throat back. Good hand targets aren't great for feet unless they're down.
That's a really important point he makes. Because of adrenaline and just body mass, just causing pain with a kick often isn't enough to stop someone.
So kicks need to be
either penetrative to the body, big muscles, maybe disrupt the nervous system, or really accurate to the head, like the jaw or temple, for disorientation or knockout. But head kicks are risky in a chaotic fight, high margin for error.
He lists some common targets from his book. Solar plexus.
Yeah, he mentions it. Says a hard shot could cause damage, but more likely just knocks the wind out temporarily. He generally cautions against high body kicks, not reliable fight stoppers, and high risk of getting your foot caught.
Joints, knees, ankles.
Vulnerable, Yeah, but small targets, often protected, need skill and accuracy with low kicks. He does mention finger kicks, though.
Finger kicks? Seriously?
Yeah, like quick kicks to the fingers if someone's trying to grab you in a grapple. Unconventional, but maybe useful distraction.
Okay. He considers the groin area pretty vulnerable, though, right? Lower abdomen, pubic bone.
Definitely.
Hmm.
He sees that as a primary, fairly accessible target for kicks. Can cause real pain, maybe incapacitate, probably not lethal, but effective.
What about the testicles? Often seen as the ultimate target. Thompson's view is more nuanced.
It is, surprisingly. Based on his own experience trying kicks, punches, even grabs on the doors or in training, he found it harder to reliably target than you'd think. Natural protection from leg muscles, instinctive guarding. He even jokes about how hard it is to get a proper grab through clothes that actually works, but he does say a direct, solid kick to the testicles would be very effective. It's just landing it cleanly in a real fight is tricky.
So overall, his tactical approach with kicks on a standing opponent isn't always about the knockout kick itself.
More often, no. It's using kicks strategically. Control distance, distract with pain, disrupt balance. Basically set them up for finishes with the hands. Don't waste kicks on well-protected areas.
Use the legs to create openings for the hands. Key takeaway.
Yeah.
Okay, what about tactics? He talks about drawing. It sounds psychological.
It is. It's about luring your opponent into a trap, basically. Making them react in a way you can exploit, like sacrificing a pawn in chess, he says.
How would you do that in a fight?
Maybe show a fake opening in your guard to bait an attack, feign being tired or hurt, pretend to back off so they chase you, tempt them into a predictable sweep, or throw a weak-looking kick.
To make them overconfident.
Yeah, lull them, make them overcommit. Then you counter hard, he gives an example. Throw a weak lead roundhouse, they counter, you nail them with a sharp side kick off the same leg.
So you're manipulating their assumptions and aggression.
Exactly. And it depends on the opponent, right? Aggressive fighter, a weak kick might draw them in recklessly. Cautious fighter might need a more convincing fake opening. He says practice this stuff in sparring.
Makes sense. What about feinting? How's that different from drawing?
Feinting is more immediate, more direct. You make a realistic pretend attack to one spot.
To make them block or move?
Right. And then you immediately hit the area they just uncovered by defending the feint.
Classic high feint, low attack. Or low feint, high attack. But Thompson isn't big on high kicks, so.
So he suggests using hand feints to set up low kicks. More practical, he thinks. Why create a high opening if you're not going to use a risky high kick?
Ah, okay. So feint to jab high.
They raise their hands.
Then you kick their leg low.
Exactly. Or feint low, maybe just lift your knee. Quickly, they drop their guard, you punch them in the face. Combining hand and foot feints is good too. Creates more confusion. The goal is to make your real shot land clean because they're defending the wrong thing.
Got it. Now, he talks about tackling different opponent types. How does he suggest using kicks against a puncher?
Against a puncher, rule one is maintain distance. Don't get trapped in their range. Use sharp, low kicks constantly. Disrupt their movement, hurt their legs, shake their confidence.
Specific tactics.
Ankle stomps to stop them advancing. Hard kicks to groin or knees for pain and distance. Front leg sweeps as they come in. Maybe rush in and hit a back leg sweep to put them down. Kick the pubic bone.
Keep moving, keep kicking low.
Yeah, never stand still in their range. If you can create space, maybe that retreating back kick to the groin.
Okay. What about a grappler? That sounds tough for a kicker. Distance disappears fast.
He's honest, it is tough. You'll probably end up grappling somewhat. So the goal is do maximum damage on their way in. Those finger kicks to disrupt grips. Painful ankle stomps. Hard groin knee kicks. Front leg sweeps. Maybe that risky Russian back leg sweep again. Pubic bone kicks. Retreating back kick if you get space.
Power and fast retraction are key here, right? Don't get grabbed.
Absolutely critical, and honestly, he recommends kickers facing grapplers learn some basic boxing and grappling themselves. You need backup plans.
Makes sense. And finally, the street fighter, the one who uses talk, deception, dirty tricks.
Yeah, Thompson sees this as maybe the toughest for a pure kicker. They work close that 18-inch range. They use intimidation, mind games, often break rules.
So kicking range is gone.
Pretty much. Hands are usually better. But even then, you need to handle the verbal stuff. Be preemptive, maybe. If you do get a tiny bit of kicking range.
Same tactics. Finger kicks, ankle stomps, groin knee kicks, sweeps, pubic bone.
Yeah, the low, disruptive stuff. Retreat and back kick if possible. But his main advice for street fighters, learn street speak yourself. Get good with hands and basic grappling. and be ready for anything. Adaptability is key. You almost have to match their mindset.
Right. Now he gets into some advanced concepts. Traveling and centerline extension. What's traveling?
Traveling just means adding a forward or side momentum to your kick. Stepping or shuffling or even a little jump into the kick.
Increases power and reach.
It can, yeah, significantly. But it also makes balancing harder. You're moving while on one leg. He shows examples with front, side, back kicks, adding a shuffle or thrust. But he warns, master the basic kick first. Otherwise, you'll just fall over.
Good advice. What about centerline extension?
Okay, this is mainly for side-to-side kicks, like the roundhouse. Your center line is that imaginary line down your middle, right? Usually you attack along their center line. Center line extension means you step sideways, away from their center line before you kick. This extends your center line laterally.
Letting you get more body rotation and power into the kick.
Exactly. More body mass, more rotational force. He gives examples for left and right roundhouse kicks, showing how the side step adds power. But again, master the basic roundhouse first before adding this layer.
This seems to lead into his idea of the angular graph of kicking. It sounds mathematical.
Maybe a bit. But the idea is simple. He's challenging the rigid way kicks are often taught in traditional arts, like a front kick is always perfectly straight, a roundhouse always perfectly horizontal.
He thinks you can vary the angles.
Yeah. Subtly change the angle to hit targets or openings better. He uses these conceptual graphs to show how.
Okay, the first graph compares front kicks and roundhouses.
Right. Imagine a straight front kick is 0 degrees. A standard roundhouse is 10 degrees. Everything in between is like a hooked front kick that gets more circular as the angle increases.
So if they block your straight kick.
You can angle the next one slightly around their block. He mentions a break point around 5 degrees where it feels more like a roundhouse than a front kick.
Interesting second graph. Front kicks and side kicks.
This one's more about hitting opponents coming from different angles without you having to totally turn your body. Straight front kick is start 0. Traditional side kick is start 10. Angles between let you hit oblique targets without a full pivot. Useful if you're surprised or facing multiple people.
And the third graph? Side kicks to back kicks.
Similar idea. Starts with the side kick, start 10, then shows angles transitioning towards a straight back kick, start 0. Again, helps target opponents off to your side or rear without a full, maybe slow body turn.
So the takeaway is?
By understanding these angles, you can create an infinite number of kicks from the basic 4, front, side, back, roundhouse. Just adapt the angle. He says watch Bruce Lee films. Lee was apparently a master of these angled kicks.
Cool concept. Finally, training gear. What does Thompson recommend for building practical kicking skills?
Well, first off, he says just running is great foot training for self-defense agility, cardio for avoidance.
Makes sense, equipment-wise.
Big fan of the 6-foot heavy bag. Great for low, powerful kicks, sweeps, timing, power, distance, traveling, centerline extension, footwork. Treat it like a sparring partner. Move around it.
What else?
Strike shields. Excellent. Similar benefits to the bag, but a partner holds them, allowing more dynamic practice. Focus pads are perfect for accuracy, hitting those small, vital targets.
And the most important, equipment.
The live training partner, he comes back to it again. Progressive sparring, minimal rules, pressure testing. That's where you really sharpen everything under realistic stress.
Okay, we've covered a lot from real kicking. Boiling it all down, what's the absolute core message Thompson wants people to get?
I think it's that real-world kicking isn't just swinging your leg. It takes serious work, smart practice, and understanding the context, mechanics, targets, tactics. He knows some super skilled kickers might disagree with some limitations he points out.
But his advice is for the average person wanting practical self-defense.
Exactly. He sees kicking as valuable, definitely an art, but it needs to be kept in perspective. Use it strategically as a support system, not usually the main weapon in a messy street fight.
He shares an anecdote about a pro boxer.
Yeah, a boxer he knew admired kicking, thought it was great. But when push came to shove in real situations, the boxer always fell back on his hands, his boxing skills. Highlights that gap between theory and reality under pressure.
So what are Thompson's final recommendations?
It's layered. Train feet to back up hands. Train grappling to back up hands and feet. Learn street speak, the psychological side. Be preemptive if you have to. And above all, awareness. Your best defense is not being there in the first place.
He ends with that tiger analogy, doesn't he? Hunting a tiger in the woods.
Yeah. You gotta understand the tiger, its habits, strengths, dangers. And you really gotta understand the woods, the terrain, the environment where the fight happens.
So for us, the listener, how should Thompson's insights about the brutal reality of self-defense, the unpredictable terrain, and the determined opponent shape our own approach. It's not just about cool moves, is it?
Not at all. It's about practical effectiveness in a complex, dangerous world. A really powerful thought to leave things on. Thanks for diving deep with us today.